growing your own herbal first aid kit. Okay, what we're going to be talking about is why we might want to grow an herb garden, growing health specific herb gardens. So, we're just going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to delve down deep into 10 different herbs that are very, very easy to grow in the garden and that are just like, yeah, some of my favorites. And if you don't grow herbs, this is where you might start. Or if you already grow herbs, this is where you might want to add some in that you haven't grown before. Um, then I'm gonna talk specifically about planting seeds, and I have a little demonstration on that. So some of you may have already have gathered pots, three different pots and three different seeds, and you can go ahead and plant along with me if you'd like to. I really encourage that. That way we all actually get started on our gardens. And I'm going to show you some really specific ways to do that. So I've chosen three different seeds that have different ways of planting so that you can learn more about that. All right. So why grow an herb garden? And I personally feel there are many reasons to grow an herb garden. One of them is an access to medicine, right? And so I know for me, like I've always really loved being able to go out into my garden and pick medicinal plants or tea plants or vegetables or fruits. And just that has been a joy to me always. And I really love the act of gardening itself. But when it really hit me how important that was when COVID started. And it was so hard to find medicinal plants. They were sold out everywhere. You know, it was really hard to get some of the herbs that I really wanted. I felt so fortunate that I could go out in my garden and actually get those plants. And so that was a huge incentive. And I thought, like, I just felt so lucky to have an herb garden at that time. It's also a great way to get to know plants in a different way. And so if you're interested in herbal medicine and maybe, you buy herbs at the store or something like that, it's really different to grow them yourself. And I find a lot of value personally in like getting to know how the herb grows and being able to like develop a relationship with it, if you will, that you might not have if you just go buy it at the store, right? You really learn about it in a very different way if you grow it. I also really love sharing plants and seeds, like I said. So I feel really passionate about that. Like I really enjoy giving away seedlings and seeds and encouraging other people to grow medicinal plants as well. I feel like it's such a wonderful thing to do for all of us. And not just for humans, but I also really love growing seeds, I'm sorry, herbs and gardens for non-human beings, right? So those can be birds that are migrating through, or those can be earthworms, or I'm also a beekeeper, so the honeybees, and I also love our native pollinators, like our native bees and our butterflies, and we just, all those insects that are in the garden, friends, students, the larger community, all of that is just really, I find it just so exciting and lovely to be able to do that. And lastly, I feel like gardening is an act of hope. And so to have a little refuge wherever you are is a refuge. And it's not just a refuge for you, but it's literally a refuge for whoever passes through, right? Whether they're human or non-human. Okay, so now we're going to get into growing herbs. And first, I will say that personally, I find I grow vegetables and herbs, and I find it so much easier to grow herbs than I do vegetables. And so I would say I'm a poor vegetable grower, but a good herb grower. And the reason I think that that is the case is that herbs, in my opinion, are just much easier to grow. They're much more tolerant of us making mistakes. They're not as finicky. They haven't been cultivated in such a way throughout history as our vegetables and edible plants have, that they're more their native form, right? And so they're a little bit tougher, if you will. And that makes them, in my opinion, easier to grow. And we have a lot of perennials that are herbs, which means they grow year after year. And those can be very easy to grow as well. So they generally like a soil pH of 6.5 to 7. But again, a lot of herbs are very tolerant of poor soil or different pHs, or, they're just, and this is a generalization, but much more tolerant than vegetables, I would say. A lot of times, if we stress an herb a little bit, we will actually get a better medicine out of it. And so, when plants don't get as much water, or when the soil is a little poorer quality, and I'll give you a caveat for this in a second, but generally they're going to be tougher, they're going to be more resistant, and they might make more of their medicinal properties because a lot of those chemicals in those plants they use for their own survival. And so if they're feeling like, ooh, I need to toughen up a little bit, life is not super luxurious where I live, right? Then they might make more of those medicinal constituents that are in the plant. The caveat for that is our really nutrient dense herbs. And so things like nettles or raspberry or alfalfa, right? Those herbs that we love as mineral rich teas and things like that, they are pulling up a lot of nutrients from the soil into their own bodies, if you will, right? They're into the plant. And so, in order for us to get all those nutrients, we want to nourish the soil. And I'm also love composting. So, I will put a lot of compost on my soil. I just top dress my soil with compost. And I especially feed those really nutrient dense herbs because they will reward me with that by, giving a lot of nutrients. So, in general, with herbs that are high in volatile oils, and those would be our aromatic herbs, things like lavender or chamomile, for instance, yarrow, lower water and more sun means higher volatile oils or higher essential oil content in the plant. All right. So, health specific gardens. We can design a garden or grow a garden that might be for a specific health system. And I've done this with herb classes before, where we might have a garden that's specific for the skin or specific for the immune system or the digestive system, right? So, if you're someone who has like a lot of respiratory issues or something, you might want to design a garden that has a lot of respiratory herbs in it. You can also do culinary herbs. So it's really fun. I remember one time this is when I was young and at my mom's house, she let me do this big herb spiral, right? So this mound of dirt with rocks going spiraling up and herbs like all of our culinary herbs, like, in that garden. And that was a really nice way to walk out the back door and have access to a lot of cooking herbs. You might, and this is something that I talk to my herbalist certificate students about, our students that are studying to be professional herbalists in that big program that we have. I talk to them about where do their ancestors come from, and might they want to grow or make a garden or learn about different recipes or different herbs that are from their back in their ancestral heritage, right? So if you say come from Italy, maybe you want to have an Italian garden or something like that with Italian herbs in it. And then you can also design specific medicine making gardens. So you might grow a garden that is for making a salve that you really love, or a cough syrup, or a tea garden where you're using a bunch of herbs that you want to dry and make tea out of. So it's all different kinds of ways that you can design an herb garden a little more specifically than just throwing in some herbs that you really like. Yeah, so those are just some thoughts, any way that you like, some ideas for you. All right, now we're moving into the 10 specific herbs that we're going to go a little bit more in depth with as far as growing. Okay, so bee balm is our first herb, and this is a native to Montana. It grows in a lot of different out throughout the Rocky Mountains. It's also called wild oregano, and it's in the mint family. And bee balm is a perennial. So the seeds take about 1 to 3 weeks to germinate, and it's nice to plant them in the spring. This plant will self-sow. And so if you plant some of it, you might get more of it. But unlike other mints, it doesn't tend to spread and like take over everything. So I have this just growing, a lot of other mints I'll grow in a pot. This one I just grow right in my garden, and the pollinators love it. It likes full to partial shade, and you can grow it by seed or root division. So bee balm is also called wild oregano, like I was saying. So it's similar to oregano, the herb, right? And so you can actually use it to cook. It's delicious, very high in volatile oils, which gives it that aroma and also which is makes it good for cooking. But volatile oils can also be antimicrobial or antiseptic. So one of the ways I like to use it is a steam inhalation if you have a cough or a cold, or you can also make a tea out of it. And it's wonderful for soothing the throat and helping with infection. It's also good for sweating. So, meaning that it will help you sweat like to break a fever. All right. Here's one of this is in my garden. All these pictures are from my garden, but this is a little native bee. So the bees really love bee balm, of course. That's where it got its name. So next we have self-heal. And self-heal will germinate the seeds in about 2 to 3 weeks. You want to put them in out in the early spring. So like now when it's still cold and freezing would be a really good time. Or you can cold stratify it. And I'm going to actually, when I start planting seeds, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I won't explain that too much right now, but just know that we're going to be talking about that. It is a perennial, and some people consider it a weed, but it is a really useful medicinal plant. And so I love this plant. It just showed up in my garden, and I'm so excited that it did. I also grow it in my lawn, and I think it's a really valuable medicinal plant. So it likes full sun to shade. It's not picky. And it will grow by seed or creeping stem. The stem will creep along the surface of the soil and put new roots down. So you can actually cut some of the stem and root it out and then plant it. So self-heal is edible. You can eat the leaves. You can also eat the flowers. It's a wonderful and gentle anti-inflammatory, so good. And that can be used topically, like for the skin. It can also be used internally. So for the, like, say, if you have digestive inflammation or irritation, say you ate something that didn't agree with you, or maybe you ate something that you were allergic to or shouldn't be eating too much of, this can help soothe that. It's an antipyretic, and that's another way of saying that it will help with a fever. It will help break a fever. It's a really nice and gentle lymphatic. And so that means like if we have swollen lymph nodes, say we're recovering from a cold or something like that, it will help that lymph to clear up, help move the lymph. It's also really wonderful for the skin. So this is one that I love to dry and make a salve out of. And actually, in that 10 Healing Herbs book, there is a salve recipe that includes self-heal in it. It's a hemostat, and what that means is it will stop bleeding. And so another great reason to use it as a salve is if you have a cut or something like that, you can apply that to your cut, and it will help reduce and stop the bleeding. You can also do this with a spit poultice, which is where you would take a leaf, kind of chew it up in your mouth, and put it right on the injury, and it will help it stop bleeding and help it heal. It's also really good for herpes. And so you can make a tea and use that as a wash. So you can, if it's genital herpes, you can do a sitz bath where you sit in it. If it's, say, like cold sores or something like that, you can just soak a little bit of the tea in like a washcloth or something and apply that directly to the area. And then drink some tea too. It's also good for the mouth and eyes, so you can do a wash with that. And in your book, the free book, it talks about how to do an eye wash. So I won't go over that in detail, but there's a recipe in there for an eye wash for that. Isn't it beautiful? It's just so nice. I took this picture out in up high in the mountains in Idaho, and it was just in this field, this random field that we happened upon. It was just outgrowing in the middle of the field. Next, we have chamomile. This is German chamomile. So there's also Roman chamomile. German chamomile is an annual. Roman chamomile is a perennial. And so we're talking about German chamomile in this class, Matricaria recutita. And it has a seed germination time of about 1 to 2 weeks. Generally, we want to plant it in early spring. This is another one that will self-sow. So like although it's an annual, like I usually grow it in a big pot and it will drop its seeds and regrow again in that pot every year. So that's pretty fun. It likes full sun and really is not particular about different soil types. And the seeds, we're going to see, this is one of the ones that I'm going to plant with today, but we're going to see the seeds are really tiny, and we're going to talk about how to plant really tiny seeds like that. So, chamomile was an official drug in the pharmacopoeia of 26 countries. Pharmacopoeias are generally books that talk about like the medicines of that country. And mostly this today, they're drugs, right? They're pharmaceuticals. But still, in 26 countries around the world, chamomile is still an official drug. Most long ago, right? Like in the 1800s, most of our uh, medicines and pharmacopoeias were herbs. So, chamomile is also anti-inflammatory and really good, although some people can actually be allergic to chamomile. It actually is also really good. If you're not allergic to it, it can be really good for allergies. And it's a nice antispasmodic, so it can stop muscle spasms. That's one of the reasons that it's so nice for the digestive system. If we're having like digestive cramping, it's also antiseptic. So again, it's high in volatile oils, and that means that it can actually fight off infection. It's a wonderful carminative, and that means it helps us digest. So when we think about like a chamomile tea that we might drink after a meal or with a meal, one of the reasons that we do that is because it actually aids digestion. And it not listed on here, but it's really also very calming and relaxing. So if we have like a chamomile tea after dinner, not only will that help us digest our food, but it can also help us relax and get ready for bed. So chamomile is wonderfully, it's used internally, of course, like as a tea, although we can also use it as a tincture. And it is also really nice to use it externally. So it's used like in a lot of lotions and body care products and things like that. And the essential oil is also very, very useful, very popular. So beautiful. Just to let you know, and because we're going to be talking a little bit more about this, the white petals are called ray flowers, and those don't make a seed. But what makes a seed are all those yellow. Those are actually in every single one of those flowers, like many, many, many flowers, and those are called disc flowers. So in every single one of those little yellow um, they're flowers. So every single one of those little yellow flowers makes its own seed. Next is plantain. This is also considered a weed, right? So this is Plantago major. There are lots of different plantain species. This plantain came over from Europe, and germination time for the seeds is about 2 to 4 weeks. You want to also cold stratify this. So that means either planting it like very early spring, like right around now is a good time, outside, right? Or um, you can, I actually will dig it up. So this is growing in our yard. I'll actually dig it up and transplant it to different parts. So I have it, I really love it. And a lot of people, consider it a weed, but it is a great herbal medicine. So, and the seeds are very, very tiny. So again, we just really press them right onto the surface of the soil. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so plantain is very, very soothing and it's really gently cooling. And so it's good for like hot, irritated conditions. It's high in allantoin, and that is an herbal constituent that is also in comfrey. But comfrey is an herb that we don't want to use very much internally, if at all. I don't really use it at all internally. So this is a really great alternative to using comfrey internally. So if we wanted to use um, a comfrey substitute and make a tea or something like that, plantain would be my go-to for that. Allantoin is a constituent that encourages cell regeneration. And what that means is healing, right? And so anything that you'd use comfrey for, either topically to like heal a wound or something like that, or internally. So people used to use comfrey a lot, say for ulcers and things like that internally. I wouldn't do that. Instead, I would use plantain for that. You can make a spit poultice with plantain, just like I was talking about with self-heal. It is high in mucilage, and mucilage in plants is like marshmallow has a lot of mucilage too. Very soothing, very, very soothing. So soothing to the skin, soothing to the mucous membranes, such as the digestive system. Uniquely, and I think very interestingly, plantain is also astringent, and that means it pulls the tissues together. So normally we don't see a plant that has both mucilage and astringent properties in it. It would be kind of be either or. And a lot of those times we might actually combine two different herbs to get that effect where we're soothing something and astringing it. So when we have irritation, right, in anywhere on the body, really, or in the body, like say in the digestive system or on the skin or something, and we want to soothe it with mucilage, we also want to pull that tissue together, which is an astringent effect that helps that tissue if it's boggy and irritated and kind of uh, not functioning very well. It will help pull that tissue together, and then that tissue is stronger and does a better job. So really does that nicely for the GI, which is the digestive system, and also for the respiratory system. Here's the seeds up on top and the leaf. And then we have calendula, and this is another one that we're going to plant today, and I'm going to show you. So this is another annual, right? So it grows year after year. This is actually one of my favorite herbs ever. And it's such a common plant, and it's so easy to grow. And that's one of the things that I think is so wonderful about it. Like anyone can grow calendula, and it does so many wonderful things in the body. Like I love this herb. It is so wonderful. So it will also self-seed. And so if you plant calendula one year and you let some seeds just fall, you're going to get calendula the next year, and it will grow. It can overwinter and start growing. The seeds will overwinter, and then it will start growing again in the early spring. So you want to plant it in the early spring. It likes full to partial shade, moderately rich soil. And like I said, it really self-seeds very easily. So for early spring around Montana, if an herb needs to be cold stratified, or if you live in the north, cold stratification has to happen when we're still freezing at night or when it's still getting really cold at night. And so if I'm talking about an herb that needs to be cold stratified and you want to, I'm going to talk about how you can do that in your home, or like say you live in Florida or somewhere further south where you're not necessarily getting freezing, California, something like that. We're going to talk about how to cold stratify there as well. But for folks that live up north, like you can literally throw your seeds out in the fall or this time of year, and they will cold stratify themselves basically. With the snow, it's hard to be able to tell like where you actually want them. So you might wait a few days and we're going to have a melt here, and then you're going to be able to see the ground and decide where you want them. Um, so I would say for other seeds that don't need to be cold stratified, it's a little tricky, right? Because usually around here, like late May is when our last frost happens. So I would say early spring would be somewhere in like March or April. And what you can do to be more specific about that is look at the seed packet and see how long it takes the seed to germinate, right? Because if the seed's going to germinate and then you're going to have a lot of freezing temperatures after that, that plant might die, right? Because it's a seedling and it's not very hardy at that point. Whereas our perennials, then once they get established, they can survive those kind of cold climates. So look at your seed packet because everybody is a little bit different. So you want to think about your germination rate. If a plant can't tolerate early spring, if they say plant after the frost, then and you can look and tell exactly, look it up on for where you live. But around here, it's usually very late May, our last frost, and that varies. Um, okay, so thanks for asking that. Okay, so calendula is edible. We can eat, and the flowers are the parts that we use. Um, it's really good for the digestive system. Again, I think of it kind of similar to plantain in that it's very, very healing, right? So good for the skin, good for the digestive system, whether it's a stomach ulcer or a duodenal ulcer, which is just the small intestine right below the stomach. Those are the two places that ulcers usually happen. If we're using it, especially as a tea, it will help increase circulation, and that can be really nice, especially say if we have cold hands or feet. It's an emmenagogue, very gentle. That means it can encourage menstruation. So if someone's having a slow starting menstruation, we have some herbs like calendula and also yarrow that we're going to be talking about that will really help to start that up a little bit better. Again, good for sweating, and part of that is that increase of circulation, very healing to the skin and also to the lymph. So again, a gentle lymphatic tonic, very, very safe. So this is an herb that I used on my babies, right? And I used it topically, or you can make a bath and put your baby in it. But this was my go-to herb for topical use for my boys when they were babies. Here's the flower. Isn't it gorgeous? And the seeds, which I think are so interesting, and we'll be seeing those again. All right. Next, we have comfrey. Comfrey is a perennial. Perennial means it will grow year after year, right? And this is one I want to warn you about because when you plant this, the roots go down very, very far. They have big tap roots. And even a little bit of a root, like an inch of a root, will grow a new plant. And what that means for transplanting is that it is almost impossible to get that plant out once you put it in. So be really careful where you plant it and don't plant it really close to a house or a foundation because the roots are big and really strong and very vibrant. Like they survive. They're survivors. So be really thoughtful about where you would actually plant your comfrey plant. Germination time for the seeds is about 2 to 4 weeks. You can plant them in the spring or the fall. So if you can plant them in the fall, that usually means they're going to tolerate going through the winter, right? Or else, yeah, because they're not going to grow in the fall. We don't want them to sprout then. They like full sun to partial shade, and you can plant by seed or, like I said, a root division. Even a small amount of the root will grow a new plant. So again, comfrey is high in allantoin, which is an excellent cell proliferant. It really encourages new cell growth. So topically, we can use it, but internally, it has pyrrolizidine alkaloids that can be damaging to the liver. So I don't recommend using it. And a lot of our older herb books will talk about like making a tea out of it or making a smoothie or even using it like for nursing, like in a nursing tea and things like that. I I don't feel like any of that is appropriate. We just have new information about comfrey now, and I don't think it's a good idea to use it internally. So I'd really caution you against that. But topically, I love it. So it's wonderful for the skin. You can use it for bruises or sores, cuts, burns, skin ulcers, eczema, psoriasis, varicose veins, scars, and honestly, the list goes on. So what I like to do is I mostly harvest the aerial or the above ground parts. I rarely I do sometimes dig up the root and I dig it up with a pitchfork and I just turn it on its side and get my snips and snip some of those roots off and pop it right back down into the ground and water it, and it does fine. That's how resilient it is. It's an amazingly resilient plant. So, but when I normally, if I'm going to make salve or something, I just harvest the aerial parts of the above ground parts.
It
Yeah.
wants to know what you think about using it on open wounds.
So on open wounds is a good question. I don't use it on deep open wounds because it can actually cause the skin to, I don't know if y'all can see my hands, but it can cause the skin to heal over and a little abscess to happen. So I like the skin to kind of heal first. The skin should heal from the bottom of the wound to the top. And then once it's healed, then you can use comfrey over the top. So if it's a deep wound, I wouldn't recommend it. If it's more of a shallow wound, that's a better time. Or just wait until the wound has closed up. Aren't those flowers gorgeous? So beautiful. All right, then here is yarrow. This is another native and native to a lot of the United States. Achillea millefolium is the botanical name. The germination time for these seeds is about 10 to 14 days. And again, they are because they're native, they're very easy that you can germinate them in the fall or the winter. I'm sorry, you can plant the seeds in the fall or the winter. So spring or fall is what I mean. It grows in full sun. It likes that the best. And you can also do root divisions with these plants. So very easy and actually they like that. So every few years to dig up part of your patch and move it or give it to a friend or something, they start to grow really densely together and then it'll start to die off a little bit. So it's a nice thing to divide the roots every few years. Here's the leaves. They're so beautiful and sweet. It's known as nature's Band-Aid because it's an amazing hemostat. So again, you can do a spit poultice of the leaves or the flower, put it on a wound, and it will stop the bleeding really quickly. And actually, it does it so well that you really want to rinse that first. Make sure that there's nothing in that wound before you put the yarrow on. And that's true, really. You should do that for all plants. Let it bleed a little bit, clean it, and then put the plant on if there's an open wound. Anyway, yarrow will seal it up so quickly. It's just really, really great and stop the bleeding, which is hemostat. It's also really good for cold and flu. So you can make a tea out of it, or you can use the tincture that way if you get sick. It's a good diaphoretic, and that means it will make you sweat. Especially if you drink the hot tea, it will help you sweat. So say you are sick and you have a fever and you want to sweat it out. That is yarrow is a great herb for that. It's also really good for the liver and a good liver protector and antibacterial. So again, high in volatile oils and really good for fighting off infection. So this is a nice one to add into a salve as well if you want to. Here's the flowers close up. And I do want to just give a little caveat here for yarrow. So there are different colored yarrows. The native yarrow is white, and I always like to go with the native plant. I feel like when we start breeding a plant for its color, like you can see the yarrow on the right-hand side is red or pink, that's bred to be that color. I find that those plants that have been altered or genetically manipulated to be a certain color or even chosen for a certain color and grown over and over again to get a certain color, right? They're not really true to the native medicinal species. And so I much prefer the native in all, if I'm using herbal medicines, I'm looking for the natives as much as possible. So I wouldn't use red or pink yarrow. And yellow yarrow is a completely different species. And so yellow yarrow, we're never looking for yellow yarrow. So really what we want with yarrow is white. Next, we have marshmallow, and this is a really wonderful, easy one to grow, Althea officinalis. The seeds will germinate in about 7 to 14 days, so 1 to 2 weeks. They also like to be cold stratified. So again, we're going to talk about how to do that. This is a perennial plant, and it likes full sun to partial shade. It likes to be moist. And one of the things to know about this plant, some seeds like to be scarified. And that means that generally they go through some kind of an animal's digestive system before they're ready to grow. And marshmallow is like this. So one of the things you can do with marshmallow is you can just take a very fine sandpaper and just sand the seed down a tiny bit until you sand through the top seed coat. And then under there, you'll see the actual seed. It's usually a lighter color. And then you stop because you don't want to sand the actual seed. But that will give you a better germination rate if you do that. All right, so marshmallow is one of our supreme herbs for our mucous membranes. It's good anywhere in the body we have mucous membranes. Marshmallow is wonderful for. So very gentle, very soothing, very safe. It's wonderful for the lungs, the digestive system, which is the GI tract, the urinary tract, the reproductive system. It's also really soothing to the skin. It's very easily digestible plant mucilage, which means it's really good for our microbiome. So just like it is a supreme digestive herb, I absolutely like it. If I work with a lot of clients, if I see someone who's having digestive troubles a lot, I will often recommend marshmallow to them. So long-term digestive issues, and that should be an M, sorry, not a turn, a term. It's really mildly immune stimulating or immune supporting. And it's a galactagogue, which means it will encourage breast milk production. So if someone's nursing or has a new baby, this is a great one for that as well. Here's the leaf. You can also use the leaves. You can dry them and make a tea, or they also make a really soothing salve. I love marshmallow leaf salve. And here's the flower. It's very beautiful. It's tiny but beautiful. Next, we have echinacea. This is a super popular one, and I really encourage people to grow this because our wild echinacea is threatened. We shouldn't be harvesting it. We should not be using it. So I never, ever, ever use wild echinacea. I encourage you to never use it. Don't harvest it. Don't purchase it. You want cultivated. And it's easy to grow. And so let's grow it in our gardens, right? So there's different species of echinacea that we can grow. The easiest is Echinacea purpurea, which is what we see here. But Echinacea angustifolia is very potent. It's a little harder to grow, but absolutely doable. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to germinate-ish. It can take longer. It can take up to about 5 weeks. This is an early spring plant that needs to be cold stratified, the seed. So, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's a perennial. It likes full sun. It likes poor, well-drained soil. So it can tolerate low water. Once it's really established, you don't need to water it a lot. And you can divide it by the root too and plant more plants. So it can grow by seed or by root. Echinacea is antiseptic, it's anti-inflammatory, it's a good antimicrobial, and one of the things we all most know it for is its immune stimulating properties, right? Really good for early stages of cold and flu, good for sore throats and other infections. And it's wonderful for bites and stings. So I'll use it topically for bites and stings. The tincture I really like for that. But you can also use it topically for like skin infections, or you can make a salve out of it if you want to. Here's the beautiful flower. And here's peppermint. So, and this is one, like I said a moment ago, that most of the mints, they can get kind of crazy. They will really spread. And so peppermint is an herb that I keep in a pot, and it will overwinter in Montana for the most part. Every once in a while, I lose my peppermint, but usually it survives the winter. Depends on how cold it gets without, and if there's snow cover or not. So generally, the germination time is about 2 to 4 weeks. Again, you want to plant it in early spring, and it is a perennial. It likes full sun to partial shade. And like I said, best grown in a pot. Um, Peppermint has been used medicinally around the world since ancient times. It was used by the Egyptians, by the Greeks, by the Romans, like it's been used all over the world. It's a good antispasmodic, and it's especially used for the digestive system, although it certainly can be used as well for any other muscle spasms. So, for instance, I really like it for headache as well. Like I use the essential oil topically. You want to dilute it. You can use it with lavender, good for a headache. It's a wonderful carminative, so kind of similar to chamomile, and you can use them together. It's going to aid digestion. Again, high in volatile oils, so which makes it a really nice antimicrobial, and it's anesthetic for pain. So it's very cooling and very helpful for pain. And like I said, one of the ways I love it for that is for headaches. It also makes antitussive means it reduces cough. So wonderful for cough. And interestingly, it's a rubefacient. That means that term means it will draw blood to an area, like if you put it on topically. Most rubefacients are hot and stimulating. Cayenne is a good example. If you use, so some of our salves or capsaicin, right, are in some of the icy hot kind of things where you can put it on and it feels really hot, like tiger balm, right? I'm sorry, peppermint is one of the only cooling um, rubefacients. So that's pretty unique, and I really like that. So if you have something really hot and inflamed, you might not want to use a hot rubefacient. You might want to use something that's a little cooler, like peppermint. Here it is, just getting ready to flower in my garden. All right. So now it's time to plant some seeds. Okay, so the seeds that we're going to plant, that I'm going to show you how to plant, are German chamomile, calendula, and echinacea. And you can see, look at the difference here, just in the size of the seeds, right? Look at those tiny little chamomile seeds in comparison to the calendula, which are some of the coolest seeds, I think, or the echinacea. Okay, so here we go. This is a little video I just made for you guys a couple days ago. Okay, so now we're actually going to plant our pots. The first thing we're going to do is echinacea seeds, and this is a cold stratification process. So, and what that means, some seeds need cold in order to germinate. And echinacea is one of those seeds. So its climate, it likes to have a winter before it grows. And so what I have here is some sand. You can get play sand or you can get tube sand. This is tube sand, and I just took out the larger rocks. And what I did is I moistened it. So I just took a little bit of water and pour a little water in there. And you don't want it too wet. So you basically want it to be kind of like a where it sticks together, but it's not like sopping wet. Okay, so that's a good amount now of water. And now we're going to take, here's the echinacea seeds themselves, and we're going to just put those right in this bag. And I would label it, especially if you're doing more than one cold stratification. So you can just put a label on that. But now all we need to do is we close this Ziploc bag up and we put it in the refrigerator. And that basically simulates a winter for this seed. And you want to have it in there anywhere from about 3 weeks to 2 months. And then you can put this out in the garden. And when you put it out, just put the sand out too. So you kind of throw the whole thing out, sprinkle it around, and there you have planted your echinacea seeds. Now, another way to do that is to actually just throw your echinacea seeds out either in the early spring, like while it's still freezing at night. So like now would be a good time. Or you can also throw them out in the fall and they will self-seed. And so if you have echinacea already in your garden, those seeds can fall into the garden and create more echinacea plants as well. The second and the third things we're going to do, take pots. And so what I've done is I've just made some recycled pots here. I like the idea of recycling things so we don't need to buy more. You can also buy little seedling pots. I wouldn't buy the peat pots because we don't want to dig up peat. So I try not to use that for gardening. I prefer, like, you could use a coconut pot if you wanted to, but it's really easy to make your own, and everybody has toilet paper rolls. So these work really good. The other thing you can do is you can use fiber, like a natural cloth, like cotton or any natural cloth, and make a little bag out of it. Those are kind of hard to work with. You can also just use some recycled cardboard. So this is going to have, it's a little tricky. It's going to have some little holes at the bottom. I haven't figured this one out totally yet. So not a super big fan of this, but you can work with that. You could also use a tiny little cardboard box. But these toilet paper roll ones work really well. So what you want to do is you want to fill your roll up with soil, making a mess here. And you want to pack it down. You want to pack it down so there's not a lot of air in there, but you don't want to pack it down super tight because the seedlings have very fragile, small roots. And so we don't want them to have to try too hard to get through that soil. And this soil is kind of a little moist, but not super wet again. And then what we're going to do is the first seed that we're going to plant is calendula. And these are really cool seeds. These are some of my favorite seeds. The way they look is just amazing. And these are larger seeds, as you can see. And so we want to plant, and this is a general rule of thumb, is that larger seeds get planted deeper because they have more resources. They have more nutrients to grow to the surface of the soil. So these are going to get planted about between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. So that's about a 1/4 inch is a little more than my fingernail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke a little hole in here that's about the depth of my fingernail, plant one of these seeds in there. And then, because not all seeds are viable, so sometimes one won't grow, I'm going to plant 2 in here. Now, if they both grow, I can either just pull one out or I can plant them both separately. And ultimately, you want to plant them about 1 foot apart when they're in your garden. So those are ready to go, the calendula seeds. And now we're going to do German chamomile. And this is from my garden. This is last year's German chamomile. You can see the ray flowers are the white petals, and the disc flowers are the seeds, and those are the yellow part. And there are a lot of seeds in this one little chamomile. So look at all those seeds, and we don't even have them all out. So the white petals won't grow plants, but these little tiny yellow seeds are totally viable. And I love to use locally grown seed because those tend to grow best in your garden, right? Because they're acclimated to your
your specific location. So these are super tiny. And the thing about really tiny seeds is they tend not to have a lot of resources. They don't have a lot of nutrients. A lot of them actually need light in order to germinate. So you can't plant them really deeply in the soil. So I'm just going to take these that I have on my finger and I'm going to just tap them into the soil. And then what you can do if you'd like is just literally sprinkle a tiny bit of soil on top. You just kind of tap them down. And then to water this one, you really want to use a very light watering. If you water it too heavily, you're going to splash the seeds, right? So I like to use like a mister or a spray bottle for that. Okay, those are our 3 types of seeds that we are going to plant in this class.
Well, I just want to thank you all so much for coming, and I hope this has really inspired you to grow a garden. I feel like it's just so lovely to do, and I feel like it's one of those things that really adds to our environment, right? To be able to do that and share with others, share your seeds, share your plants, share with the bees. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.